Well, viewers, talks between Iran and United States that were put on hold appear to be back on track. Today, all eyes will be on a mountain resort in Switzerland, where American and Iranian delegations are all set to come face to face for the first time since the peace deal was signed. Now, the meeting marks the start of a crucial 60-day window during which both sides will attempt to turn the deal into action. But the task will not be as easy as it sounds, because even before the talks begin, the run-up has been anything but smooth, because Iran has once again blocked the Strait of Hormuz, accused the United States and Israel of violating the deal, and thrown fresh uncertainty over the entire process. So the stakes couldn't be higher. Leading the Iranian side will be the parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, as well as Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. The United States will be represented by the Vice President J.D. Vance, along with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Now, the venue for this high-stakes diplomatic engagement is in a resort that overlooks a lake in Switzerland, and on the table will be some of the most sensitive issues in the region. Listen in to what the U.S. Vice President said on these talks. We have breaking updates now coming in. Qatar says that US-Iran talks have begun in Switzerland, mediated by Qatar as well as Pakistan. My colleague Mayank is joining us on the broadcast with the details. And Mayank, there are a lot of hopes that are expected, a lot of hopes that are pinned on this meeting because the deal has been signed, yes. But yet again, there is a cloud of uncertainty. Tell us what is expected and why there are still fears that these talks may become inconclusive. What's expected in this meeting?
As far as the things are concerned, there are multiple strands to it. What I mean to say is actually, with time, there are landmarks which are to be crossed before 60-day final ultimate agreements come into being, actually. And for the initial 30 days, it will be, something like defreezing the funds which are almost 12 billions. And amidst that, blockade has to be removed. The mines, which are mines, which were applied and put across the Strait of Hormuz by Iran, they have to be removed, or a demining process has to take place within 30 days. So multiple things are associated with the landmarks which are needed to be crossed. But then definitely something positive is about to take place, because broadly the agreements have been thrashed generally, and it is sub-conditions which are yet to be finalized. But in that case also, Lebanon has been remaining a sticking point, and we have to see how both sides, which is in this case Iran and the US, are going to wade through or cross across this kind of a hindrance, or rather, what solution will be found in that case? Because as of now, till yesterday, there was operation which continued from the Israel side, and Israel has there had been two consistent things which Times Now has been bringing out, is that Iran has been ready to even forego the entire ceasefire agreement in the case if Lebanon operations by Israel continue. Israel on the other side had made it sure that they continue with the operations on Lebanon. So this is going to be something really sticking point, and we have to see how both Iran and the US come to an agreement or a middle point on at least this point.
Yes.
Else, larger, broader points will require almost 60 days for them to be ultimately ratified.
Yes, and will they uphold the memorandum of understanding that has been signed? That question still remains, especially considering there are some experts who also believe that maybe Israel should have also been part of these talks, that Hezbollah should have also been part of these talks. To stay with us, even before the talks began, Iran has sent a very strong message, because the aircraft carrying the foreign minister Abbas Araghchi and the Iranian designation to Switzerland carried a very striking symbol. The words Minab 168 were painted on the aircraft, a tribute, Tehran says, that is dedicated to the children who have been killed in the Minab school attack, a reminder of war and loss as diplomacy takes center stage. Let's now tell you about what is expected in this meeting that is currently underway. The talks come at a time when the trust between the two sides remains quite fragile even now. Iran has already raised objections over Hormuz and has also accused the US and Israel of violating the spirit of the agreement. At the same time, Washington is expected to see clarity on Iran's nuclear commitment and the path forward over the next 60 days. So from the Hormuz flashpoint to the Israel-Lebanon crisis, from nuclear commitments to the implementation of the peace deal itself, a wide-ranging agenda awaits this delegation in Switzerland as they continue their talks. Let's get you breaking updates now coming in, because ahead of this negotiation, the Iranian president has once again reaffirmed the country's stand, going on to say that Iran will not give up their right to enrich uranium and that the United States will have no choice but to accept this. So, Mayank, what does this indicate? Because in the memorandum of understanding as well, there were a few questions on whether Iran had actually agreed to the U.S. demand of not having, uranium enriched or nuclear weapons. But now Iran again going on to say that their right to enrich uranium will not be given up. What does this indicate? How are the talks going to proceed from here?
When you go through the 14 points which are part of the memorandum of understanding, one important point comes out is that this is going to be one of the most important issue to be discussed, but then 60 days have been given for such a sticky point to be discussed or thrashed threadbare. In that case, it is also important that peaceful requirements of the nuclear energy or domestic requirements of Iran is also to be kept under consideration, and for that even France has come into being. That's a very important point actually. So we have to see, are these play of words, or in 60 days there will be some kind of an agreement on how enrichment will be allowed to not to reach the military grade, or some kind of a nuclear reactor which is for peaceful purposes, for energy, for radiological requirements, which is medical, will be supplied by the US. But what has come out from the president's side is actually significant. For at least 60 days, there will be no agreement at least on this issue. But then post that, we have to see how these two sides, they come into agreement, because as part of the MOU also, there is a mention that for peaceful requirement, there will be some kind of an arrangement. And also the other point is the amount of 440 kg of enriched uranium, which lies with Iran. We have to see how it is going to be disposed of, or how is it going to be de-enriched, or it will be handled with or stored. That we have to see. So in all, we have to see for 60 days how both sides are going to play with the words, because ultimately it has to be decided. And mind it is going to be something, or the biggest thing on stake for both sides.
Okay, all right. Mayank, do stay with us. Let's also talk about what is the understanding that seems to have been reached as of now. It's only been a few days since the memorandum of understanding between the US President Donald Trump and the Iranian president was signed, but the fragile calm in West Asia is already being tested, because Iran's Revolutionary Guard claims that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. Now, Tehran cited the failure to implement the first clause of the ceasefire agreement and continued the ceasefire violations in Lebanon. Now, Iran has warned that in response, the Strait of Hormuz will be closed to shipping traffic. This raised fresh fears over the regional stability and global energy supplies. Now, fresh attacks are also being reported from Lebanon, with Israeli strikes continuing to hit multiple locations despite the ongoing efforts to preserve the ceasefire. Lebanese officials say that at least 32 people have been killed in the attacks since dawn. Women, children among the casualties. Amid these renewed concerns over tensions in West Asia, the US Vice President J.D. Vance has also struck an optimistic tone on the ceasefire, saying that he remains confident that the truce can be maintained. Vance suggested that Iran appears willing to change its behavior and expressed hope that the ongoing diplomatic efforts will help preserve stability in the region. Now, referring to the situation along Israel's northern border, he acknowledged that Hezbollah occasionally fires into Israeli territory, prompting retaliatory action from Israel. However, he also stressed that conditions have improved much more in the recent weeks. Let's get you more breaking updates now coming in. A source close to the negotiations says that Iran is maintaining a tough position on the Strait of Hormuz, insisting that the waterway will remain closed unless Israel halts its attacks in Lebanon and guarantees Lebanon's territorial integrity. Now, the source also claims that Iran wants Washington to fulfill its commitments, including the easing of restrictions on Iranian oil exports and releasing the agreed funds before any move to reopen the strategic shipping route. Mayank, on one hand, you have the United States, including, of course, the US President Donald Trump himself going on to say that the Strait of Hormuz is open, but Iran seems to be very, very clear. There are a few points that have been discussed in the Memorandum of Understanding, and unless that is fulfilled, the Strait of Hormuz is not going to open.
Pratibha, the important point is actually both sides have been applying the policy of wait and watch. In one way, the subconditions, which will lead to final inking of the deal, is actually, that also includes not only removal of the blockade, which is depositioning, moving away the warships which are positioned at the Gulf of Oman on the entry point of Strait towards the Strait of Hormuz. The other point was IRGC was to loosen its control and regulation on Strait of Hormuz. What we see is actually, although initially the movement had started, but then we are hearing that it has come to a stop. Because even, some kind of an action which leads to doubts in the minds of seafarers, it can be dangerous or jeopardize not only the cargo, but the lives, as we have seen earlier. So that also the atmosphere or the way the environment shapes up, it also pushes the things to a stop. So that is what is happening actually. This ambiguity is leading to whatever is happening right now. But then right from the beginning, control and regulation inside the Strait of Hormuz was maintained by the IRGC, whereas the entry point towards the Strait of Hormuz, which is Gulf of Oman, was looked after by placing the warships by the US Navy. It was the blockade. So both sides have to be showing signs of let up from their sides. Only then the movement will start this side. And Lebanon has also become another sticky point. Let us see how both sides, they tide over it.
Okay. All right,
yeah,
Mayank. Thank you for joining us with all those details. We will come back to you through the day for those updates, because these talks are going to be very crucial for the entire world.